Hello, and welcome to the first of our daily reflections for Holy Week. I'm going to begin by reading from John chapter 12, starting at verse 1. 6 days before Passover, Jesus entered Bethany, where Lazarus, so recently raised from the dead, was living. Lazarus and his sisters invited Jesus to dinner at their home. Martha served. Lazarus was one of those sitting at the table with them. Mary came in with a jar of very expensive aromatic oils, anointed and massaged Jesus' feet, and then wiped them with her hair. The fragrance of the oils filled the house. Judas Iscariot, one of his disciples, even then getting ready to betray him, said, "Why wasn't this oil sold and the money given to the poor? He would have easily bought 300 silver pieces." He said this not because he cared 2 cents about the poor, but because he was a thief. He was in charge of their common funds, but also embezzled them. Jesus said, "Let her alone. She's anticipating and honouring the day of my burial. You always have the poor with me. You don't always have me." Reflecting back on that reading, I'd like you to imagine today that Jesus is invited to your house for dinner tonight. And I wonder if he was really coming, what your day would be like. I know that mine would be full of me frantically tidying, cleaning, polishing, hoovering. I'd be wanting to make the best meal I could that I knew was going to go right and wasn't going to be a disaster. I'd be making sure we were all dressed well, the table looked good. I'd be spending the whole day trying to make everything as good as I could for the time when Jesus arrived. And I'd like you to actually spend your day today really imagining that Jesus was coming. But that doesn't mean I want you to go rushing around cleaning and stuff. Actually, nobody's coming around, they're not allowed. So you haven't got to worry about that. But do imagine that tonight, when you prepare your meal and sit down, that Jesus is going to be with you. Now, if you have children in your house with you, you might like to ask them to prepare a table decoration. They might want to go in the garden and pick some flowers, or they might want to make something, model something as a table decoration to make the table look nice. They might even want to do place settings and leave a space for Jesus. Tonight, as you cook your meal, I'd like you to imagine that Jesus has arrived a little bit early and he's come and he's standing in the kitchen next to you. And as you're stirring the gravy or taking the casserole out of the oven or chopping the vegetables, that Jesus is just making small talk with you, just like a guest would if they were coming to your house. When you have your meal, you might like to light a candle. Got one here. You might like to light a candle and put that in on the table as well, or maybe at the place where Jesus would be sitting, just to remind you that the light of the world is present and he's with you. And as you sit down for your meal tonight, again, if you've got family with you and you can, ask them, what would you ask Jesus if he was here, or what would you talk to him about? Have a discussion together and imagine what his response might be to your questions or what you were discussing. And if you're eating alone, imagine he is sitting opposite you at the table. He is that close. He really is, just that we can't see him. You might be able to talk out loud to him if you're on your own, and ask the Holy Spirit to guide your imagination as you think about how Jesus might respond to your questions or what you're discussing. Just really trying to get a sense of his presence with you as you eat your meal and share it tonight. Sharing meals with friends is such a special activity that we're probably all missing at the moment. So sharing it with Jesus could be equally special. In this reading, Jesus has already had his triumphant entry into Jerusalem, and he knows how his week is going to go. He knows how the week will end. He knows that Good Friday is coming. And it's interesting that Mary seems to get a sense of this herself. You know, everybody's looking at her shamefully, thinking how badly she's behaving, what a scene she's making. And yet she doesn't care about what any of them think. She only has eyes for Jesus. Her focus is entirely on him. And with all these learned scholars and people who've been following him for years, it is Mary who somehow understands what is happening. Jesus has been predicting his death for ages and none of them are listening. But Mary has started to understand because she's been spending time at his feet, listening to Jesus. Mary gave the thing she owned of most value to the person who valued her the most. That oil would have been worth about a year's wages. It was the most valuable thing she possessed, but she willingly gave it to the man who put the most value on her. At the moment, we all have a lot of time. Some of us have got more time than we're used to, but it is still of value. And Jesus asks us for our time. He doesn't ask us for a fancy meal. He doesn't ask us to have cleaned our house spotless for him. He just asks for us to rest in his presence. And so I pray today that you will be able to go through your day imagining him beside you. And as you sit down for your meal this evening, imagine having that conversation with him. He is that close to us. He's always listening. He's always with us. Spend time in his presence while you can, and listen for his voice. May God bless your time with him. Amen.